How's it going? And welcome to episode 190 of On the Wire, proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. Follow the pod on the Twitter and on YouTube at On the Wire Pod. I am Adam Howe. You can follow me everywhere at 80 grade. That's all spelled out. Kevin Hasting. He followed on the Twitter at Hasting Kevin and on Blue Sky at his new favorite handle at Chasing Wins. We've got a great show lined up for you today. We've got an amazing guest. If anybody's watching on the tube of views, you already can see him. Mr. Dave Funnell. You know Dave from his work at Pitcher List, at Fantrax, and soon to be Pitcher List Podcast Network Edition, the Fantasy Baseball Beat. Dave, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to talk all things injuries, as you can see from the title, all the guys that are coming back, hopefully healthy, into 2025, and no better guest to have on the show to talk that than you. So Dave, welcome. Thanks for coming on. How you doing?
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. I'm doing well. Enjoying the off season and ready to talk some injuries and let's keep it going.
Yeah. I mean, the off season is just part of the season, right? Like things just keep on going. We were joking before because it's like, oh, we got to talk news too. And we're like, oh, it's actually kind of a slow news week. But we have plenty of, injury updates / just speculation to make for 2025. Kevin, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Adam. I'm excited. Excited for Dave being here and to dive in on some of these players coming back, or some of them we did see back, and that'll definitely be taken into account. But yeah, we got a lot to talk about here.
Yeah, a lot of players. Of course, we're going to play our favorite game. We're going to play Ask. We're going to lump up a lot of these players together to kind of, based on I'm going to use their gladiator ADP because, if you're thinking about guys that are injured, have been injured, or might get injured, gladiators are where you think about that the most because you can't do anything about it if it happens again. So that's going to be taking into consideration as you're making those drafts as well. We'll get to that. Couple of little tiny news items that I want to get your guys' take on. We talked about Tampa Bay Rays playing in a new stadium in 2025 last week, Kevin. And then, of course, we always mention how the A's are going to be playing in West Sacramento. But now we get word that the Baltimore Orioles are going to make some additional adjustments to their stadium heading into 2025 to basically correct the overcorrections, as it was stated, in their outfield walls. What are you taking out of this, Kevin, going into 2025? Are you expecting this to make a major change to hitters, to pitchers, to both, or is it not? They're not overcorrecting it back to where it was before? So is that really not enough of a change for you to really take much interest?
No, I think it is enough for both pitchers and hitters here. It is, like you said, not completely back to way it was prior to the changes that they initially made, but these are significant changes. The two players that come to mind to me, one hitter, one pitcher, right off the bat, Ryan Mountcastle. I've seen several places that all are pretty much agreement that ballpark cost him about 8 home runs in 2024. That's huge for a guy like Ryan Mountcastle. And then Dean Kramer on the pitching side. He's the one that seems to, at least over the past season, got the most benefit as a pitcher with the dimensions where they were. So yeah, Mountcastle's moving up, Kramer's moving down, and some other players as well. But those are probably the two most significant changes that I'm making.
Dave, is there anybody in Baltimore specifically that kind of stands out besides the players that Kevin mentioned? And then also, I want to get your take, because you weren't here last week with us, your take on Tampa's being able to play in another minor league stadium. Baltimore, still a major league stadium, no matter what adjustments they're making. Tampa gets the opportunity of playing in a Florida State League stadium. Big difference there. So start me off in Baltimore and then move your way down into the AL East, into the Tampa situation.
Yeah, for Baltimore, I agree with Mountcastle. Definitely, he's probably the happiest person in Baltimore right now that the wall's being moved. But another one that I like is Jordan Westberg, because he lost 4 home runs alone last year, just with the wall the way it is. So I think he's going to enjoy it as well. And a lot of things he was doing last year seemed real and seemed like it can carry over. Pitching wise too, the only other pitcher I really saw was maybe Cade Povich, because I know he doesn't do well with his command and control. He walks a lot, and he's got a big fly ball rate. So I just worry that some of those fly balls are gonna carry themselves over, and he might lose even more value than he had going forward. So, but yeah, I agree with everything you said, Kevin. And, yeah.
So moving down the coast, going into Tampa, like I mentioned last week, Tampa Bay Rays actually get to stay in Tampa Bay and play in Tampa proper, just playing in the Tampa Bay Stadium of the New York Yankees, where they play their spring training, and of course part of their Florida State League. Anything, Dave, anything stand out there for you, whether it's for the Rays, or as I mentioned last week, it's just all these changes happening to the AL East, being in hitter friendly ballparks. It's got to be of note to some hitters.
Yeah, and it's definitely this is probably, of all the 3 changes, this is probably the biggest one for me, because they're moving outdoors, and they've always seemed to have that little advantage being inside. I think it was last year they had almost a half run differential better playing indoors. And I know there's going to be some pitchers that probably will have some problems. I know Shane Baz pitched better indoors than outdoors. And I know that Fairbanks, he deals with what's that syndrome called, with numb hands?
Woodruff had it too, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I think, maybe in April and September, there might be some nights there where it is a little cool. I don't know what the temperature needs to be for him to suffer from that, but I think his productivity is going to go down a bit too. But I do like the fact for their hitting that it's going to be, I think I read it's going to look identical to Yankee Stadium with the short porch. So I think someone like Brandon Lau, if he can stay on the field, is going to really take advantage of that.
I do love that fact that, like, there are teams, especially teams with older stadiums. New Yankee Stadium's not old, obviously, but Yankee Stadium as an idea is old. Recreating their stadiums down in their spring training facilities. The Red Sox have Fenway South down in Fort Myers, and of course they have other aspects as well. So let's get into some really small news here as I fix my own technical difficulties here. That's okay. The small news here that kind of came across was the Cubs making a couple of different moves, including DFAing basically a whole bunch of players that they don't expect to do anything for them. I'm curious to know if you think that they will find new homes and actually get an opportunity. Literally just thinking if they're going to go across to the White Sox, because that's really where they're going to find any opportunity. We're talking about once highly regarded prospect Brennan Davis, once closer Adbert Alzolay, who's coming back from his own injury at some point next year, maybe, and then Patrick Wisdom also being DFA'd. So do you, either one of you guys, Dave, I'll start with you, see these guys actually making an impact with a new team at any point during 2025?
The only one I could see, because I don't think Alzolay will play this year, might be Wisdom, just because he's got almost 30 home run seasons in his past. So maybe a new change of scenery somewhere might help him. But even that, I don't know. It's not looking too great, but I'm sure he'll sign on somewhere. He's good enough to start somewhere, I guess, but I don't know. I don't see much for him.
Kevin, Wisdom's the one came to mind as well, just because we actually did see some kind of production from him in the past. But I mean, I've always had a little soft spot for Brendan Davis, but obviously we're not seeing anything from him in the minors, plus all of his injury concerns as well. Do you have any hope for any of these guys?
I really don't. Yeah, I agree with Dave. Wisdom will catch on somewhere, short side of platoon, but he wasn't even good versus lefties in 2024. So yeah, I somebody will give him a shot because of the power that we've seen from him in the past. Short side platoon guy, but yeah, I don't see any fantasy relevance here.
All right, fair enough. Wish I could make up more stuff just so we could keep talking, but instead, I really want to just kind of pick Dave's brain a little bit before we get to our main topic here about the fantasy baseball beat. We've talked to, we talked. And I'm back.
It's almost done with the text.
Almost. All right, thanks. Where did I leave off? Where did you guys stop hearing from me?
Right at the beginning.
All right, when I said nothing to see here, folks. All right. I wish there was more things that I can make up here to talk about, but this really was a pretty slow news week from the last time we recorded, Kevin. So instead, I want to really pick Dave's brain a little bit about the fantasy baseball beat, what we have coming on to the Pitcher List Podcast Network. And we've talked to Chris, we've talked to Mike a whole bunch of times. This is the first time I'm able to really talk to you about the show. You're the newest addition to the podcast as well, bringing obviously a different voice, a different kind of perspective on things. Can you talk to me about kind of like what drew you to joining those guys on that show, and what we can expect out of Fantasy Baseball Beat as you join the Pitcher List Network?
Okay, well, thanks. Two things kind of drew me to them. One was they're pretty amazing guys. I got to know them personally, and they're really tremendous people. And two, when I'm looking at injury news and things like that, I do actually not interact, but I use a lot of what the baseball writers are actually reporting. So it just, from all of us, it just made sense to if anyone was going to come aboard, maybe I could be there to. I'm always listening to them, reading about their content, and so it's good to just get firsthand information from different beat writers. Plus, Mike and Chris. Chris is a tremendous host. Mike is great. He knows his closers. He knows everything. Like, he's just the man to go to. So having the three of us there, talking to the people who are there on the field with the teams, it's just. It's something I'm very excited to be a part of, and coming to Pitcher List is like icing on the cake. It's just it's awesome. So we're all very excited.
Yeah, very excited to have you guys on board as well. You guys have definitely put together a show, in my opinion, just a show that didn't really exist. I think a lot of, especially from a fantasy standpoint, there's a lot of talk about what beat writers say, or like a quote that they might have grabbed from so and so, from some coach, some player, or whatever. But to actually kind of pick their brain and get inside of the thought process about that particular team, I think is just great. Obviously, it also brings attention to those beat writers that are doing the work, and actually bringing to light, that hard work that they're actually putting in on a day-to-day basis. From a fantasy lens, is great. Kevin, I mean, you always say like the only reason you joined Twitter to begin with was to follow beat writers. Has that changed? Has that kind of changed? That mentality changed going to a different social platform, or do you find yourself kind of following less beat writers over time, and then like leaning more so on fantasy analysts or any other particular area? How much are you putting into beat writers now than you were, say, 5 years ago?
5 years ago, that would be tough to say, but 5 months ago, much more now. And it is the transition to another platform, right? It's we have all these lists people are putting out there that make it really easy for us to follow a whole bunch of them all at once. And they're posting there. It's easy to find. We don't have as much other stuff coming up on our feeds. I'm sure that's going to change for those that are making this transition. I'm sure they're going to end up being about the same at some point. But as of right now, I'm seeing more things for more beat reporters than I've seen in years. And it's amazing. And I love it.
Yeah, it's just easier to filter through all the
noise.
As you said, the noise gets louder over time, sure. But at least right now, it's a dull roar rather than, in your face. Dave, have you made the blue sky switch already as well? Yeah.
I did. Yeah, I did that this week. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So, and
jumping on the bandwagon.
It's good though. They're both good. I like them both, but yeah, it's a nice experience over there. So
yeah, agreed. Well, hopefully we can keep our nice things as long as possible, and keep it going. But we're gonna keep it going here as we go into our favorite game, or at least my favorite game, Ask. We're talking about players that missed time, most of them considerable amount of time in 2024, coming back into 2025 in hopefully one piece, and we'll get to that right after this quick break. All right, we're back. You're still listening to On the Wire. I am Adam Howe, joined as always by Kevin Hasting, and we are very lucky to have with us Dave Funnell joining us as we talk about the healthy additions to the 2025 season, hopefully. And we're going to, Dave did a great job because I was just slammed this week putting together a list of players that missed a bunch of time, or at least have healthy question marks heading into this offseason. And a couple of them I had to peel away just because there literally were, unfortunately, too many names to consider. Some of them we talked about most recently, like Zach Neto. Other ones we know, like Christian Scott, we took off because we don't expect him to play at all, or at very minimally in 2025. So, of course, we lumped these guys together into threesomes, and I'm going to get your guys' take on who you would avoid, who you would stream, and who you would keep based on whatever factors you want to consider. And I'm going to be utilizing current Gladiator ADP. There's been 19 drafts so far. Gladiator drafts, for anybody still not aware, are drafts on the NFBC where you draft all starting spots and no bench. So you can't, it's not even best ball, it's only ball. So you have you can set it and forget it because there's literally nothing you can do about it anyway. And so these, I want to use that ADP because these injuries are a major factor to consider when drafting in these style of drafts. So that should be baked into this ADP as well. So we're going to start at the top. Kevin, we're going to start at the top here in the top 2 rounds of the Gladiator ADP. So these are high-end players who missed a considerable amount of time, but they're still being drafted in the first 2 rounds here. So you've got to assume there's a lot of confidence in their return, and they're not repeating what we saw in the most recent history of 2024. Tell me, of course, the major question is which one of these guys you have to avoid, stream, and keep based on their ADP, based on their history, based on whatever else you want to consider. But overarching question, like, should you have as much confidence in all 3 of these guys, knowing that they are being drafted as such as well? So, of course, I'm talking about Ronald Acuna Jr. Being drafted at ADP of 20, Rafael Devers at 31, and Ketel Marte at 27 in between the two. All being drafted really close together to each other, but all in the second round of a Gladiator 15-teamer. Kevin, I ask you the same question. Who do you avoid? Who do you stream? Who do you keep? And should you have confidence in any of them?
Yeah, that's the tough part. The confidence is definitely what's tough here. Um, so I'm keeping Devers. I know there's still a little bit of concern with the shoulder, but he's the one I am most confident in here. And in the couple of drafts I have done, I have drafted Devers at about this spot, 2-3 turn. I've done that, and I'm fairly confident in that. Yes, the shoulder's a little concerning, but I think with this offseason, I'm comfortable. The the other two is pretty intriguing, especially for playing this game. Uh, but I think my avoid is, and this is kind of weird, but it's something we've talked about over the past few episodes. I think my avoid is actually Ketel Marte, and it's because he's the only second baseman, right, really being drafted up here. Yeah, we see Albies fairly high. We'll see, Altuve is the fourth second baseman off the board quite a bit later than this. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, right? Ketel Marte in November Draft Champions has an ADP inside the top 25. There's not another second base eligible player being drafted inside the top 3 rounds. Albies is just barely outside the top 3. Then Altuve is now third at an ADP of 60. And we drop all the way to Marcus Semien. We talked about that before. I'm starting to be turned on more to Marcus Semien. But what I'm getting at here is when what you are giving up when you make a draft pick. If I don't draft a second baseman, if I don't draft Ketel Marte, I'm not really giving anything up. I'm only losing that elite performance to one other person in my league, as opposed to shortstop, where 3 of the top 5 picks off the board are shortstops. 6 of the top 15 or 16 off the board are shortstops. There, I would have more of an issue letting Ketel Marte go in that scenario. Here, one person in my league is getting what the projections tell us would be an advantage over the rest of the players in the league, but I'm not losing out to 6 of them. So that's why I'm going to avoid Marte here. We've talked about it over the past few weeks. Having a plan for second base does not mean taking a second baseman early. That makes Acuna my streamer. He's probably the one I'm most concerned about with the injury aspect of it.
Sure.
But by default, he's my stream here because I do not see myself taking Marte in this spot when he's the only one eligible at his position being taken there.
Yeah, and the rub on this game, especially in this scenario, is that if you're not keeping them, you're not drafting them in a gladiator, so you're not getting them.
These guys,
Obviously, you're not streaming anybody in a gladiator. Of course, I'm glad you brought up Albies. Albies isn't on our list, so I'm glad that you kind of brought up that name as obviously somebody who missed some time himself. He did come back at the very end, and then missed some time at the very end. So, Dave, do you, of these top guys in this top second, in the second round pick that you'd have to make in this 15 teamer, do you find yourself in the same boat as Kevin just outlined, or do you have any differences in who you would keep, stream, or avoid?
I agree in keeping Devers. I think this, and I'm going to be watching his off season, but I think this is just an anomaly for him. It was just one of those seasons where he hurt himself in spring, and he just couldn't get himself better. So hopefully he believes and the team believes that he'll be able to rest up and be okay. So fingers crossed that happens. But I would actually avoid Acuna. I don't like that high ADP right there. And the last time that he had surgery, the season that he came back, he just didn't perform the best way that we know he could. He had a really down season then. And I'm worried about both of his knees, really. I know he had the meniscus irritation in the right knee, which was that ACL, the first ACL injury back in the spring last year. And I don't know if the other ACL was him trying to overcompensate or something. but the one season that we saw him hit out of this world might be the outlier there, because a lot of the underlying stats, like his strikeout rate, his walk rate, everything went right for him that year. And I'm just worried that we'll see a repeat of that one season where he came back, which wasn't first round or maybe even second round material. And we already know he's probably going to miss at least a month. So as much as I agree with the stuff on Marte, I would probably stream Marte just because I'm not sure about the depth at second base, and then I would avoid Acuna.
All fair enough points. It's always hard to make these kind of decisions on injury-riddled guys this early in a draft. You're like, you're already putting yourself into some kind of a hole. But, you guys both agree on the whole Devers is the safest of the three situations here. Let's get into one that has a little bit more of a range in ADP. We'll go by position now with the catcher position. Not a lot of players missing a whole lot of time, but we were able to scrounge up three guys that are coming back in after missing some capacity of 2024. Starting at the top of the draft, right in the mix with these last guys we just picked. Currently at 28 ADP in Gladiators is Wilson Contreras, with the possibility of him moving positions, or the Cardinals announcing he would be moving positions in 2025. Still gonna obviously keep that catcher eligibility though. JT Realmuto at 138, and then Gabriel Moreno, the bargain bin of the bunch here at 209. So Dave, keeping in mind this, their ADP, the team context, their injury history, whatever other things you want to consider, who are you of this group? Who are you avoiding streaming and keeping?
Excuse me. I think I'm going to keep Realmuto, even though I don't think he's going to have the best season. It's the ADP there of Contreras at 28. As much as I like him, especially with his new position next year, 28 just seems like a lot for a guy that has had injury problems in the past and that is switching positions in order to stay healthy. So I'm unsure if he'll be able to do that, but I do like him a lot this year. Realmuto, I'm going to hope that this was just an anomaly of a season that he just had. I'm worried that he might not be running as much as he used to, but at 138, I can keep him there. I think I'll stream Moreno and I'll avoid Contreras at ADP 28.
It sounds like it's the ADP that's really driving the fear of Contreras, not so much the playing time or just being able to actually produce at that level, even at the catcher position. That obviously has to play into it, that, he may not produce at a first base level at that ADP, but will he produce at that level at a catcher position? Kevin, where are you falling on these three guys based on everything we just talked about?
Yeah, it's really hard for me not to say keep Wilson Contreras. And that is probably what I would end up doing with the move to first base / DH. I think this gets him in the lineup for those, approaching 600, maybe exceeding 600 plate appearances that we don't see from a lot of catchers. Surprisingly, Realmuto is my avoid here. Because Gabriel Moreno is at a minimum a stream, and it's tough not to say keep him. And this is something new for me this week, as we're seeing more projections, as we're seeing the version 2 of our PL Pro projections that have playing time mixed in, and as I'm looking at Steamer projections, Gabriel Moreno is projected as a better fantasy catcher in 2025 than JT Realmuto. But the PL Pro have them right about even.
Sure.
Steamer has Moreno quite a bit higher than Realmuto. with approximately the same projections on each. So at 80 picks later, I have to take a new look at Moreno. Remember, I've been saying all offseason, 10 or 11 catchers. It's based on that minimum threshold of plate appearances. Now these latest projections have them at close to 500, and I think our PO bot has them at 550 plate appearances. That puts them in that group for me. So surprising to myself, I'm on Moreno here.
Yeah, I mean, it always comes down with catcher position, as we've been talking about it a couple of weeks. And Kevin, you've been driving the train on this one. Playing time, get those extra plate appearances, volume your way into basically an extra bat if you can in your lineup. All right, let's just move across or around the infield here down to first base. As all of these guys, we're going back to the little glob, if I can steal that term, in ADP. We see Tristan Casas right at 100, Vinny Pasquantino at 117, and then going back to Arizona, Christian Walker at 109. So these guys are all going back to back to back at the first base position. If there is a first base run, these guys are right in the middle of it. And so, Kevin, you reminded me of two of these three guys. And one of them, by default, your boy here, Vinny P in Kansas City. Which one of these guys do you trust the most to keep? And then which ones are you, if they're available, stream, and another one that you need to avoid, whether you want to or not?
I am going to keep Christian Walker. I think what he's done over the past 2 or 3 seasons, he'll be back in the lineup and back to doing it. And this one, because they're all drafted in the same spot, right? This one is, who do we feel most comfortable with their health in this spot? If we are going to take a first baseman in this spot, and I feel really good about Christian Walker here. Slightly concerned with Vinny Pasquantino. He will be my streamer. He didn't look very good in the postseason, and he was rushed back. Yes. I think with a full off season he'll be okay, but it wasn't great. Tristan Casas we haven't seen hardly at all. We did for a little bit there. I have the biggest question marks. The caveat is here, I think the player with the potential to finish the highest, maybe even as a first round fantasy player, is Tristan Casas. I'm least comfortable the way things lingered last year and the way he talked about it and all the language we heard about the car wreck inside of him. And so it just doesn't feel right. Since these guys are being taken in the same spot, I feel most confident in the health of Christian Walker.
I mean, I think because these guys are going all at the same spot, the game again has to be, slightly tweaked. It's like, because who do you actually feel comfortable picking right here? And so your avoid means a lot much more. It's like, or does that mean if the other two guys are off the board, you are skipping Casas and going to a different first base altogether? Or are you, still considering drafting Casas at this spot if he's the third one taken of this bunch?
And a couple other guys, right? When you're having that conversation, Spencer Steer right ahead of him, Jake Berger and Cody Bellinger right after him. I mean, this is a group of 6 guys being taken within 8 picks of each other. So are you more confident in these guys that did miss time in 2024 over the guys that did not? I almost feel like it becomes a bigger question here. I still think, I'm most confident in Christian Walker in this group.
Dave, considering all that about as much as you've been following these guys' injuries, I mean, of course, you still need to answer the ask question. But which one of these guys are you saying boat? Like, is Casas on the bottom of the 3 as far as the guy you trust the most? Or is that potential that Kevin was mentioning kind of elevating him a little bit more over the other guys?
Yeah, I agree with that potential. I thought that was a really good take. And I agree that of the 3, he probably has the most ability or upside to really, be the best of this group. The safest one that I think, though, and I agree, I think it's Christian Walker, and some of it might just depend on where he signs this offseason. I don't know if that's a big issue because he's done it before. But yeah, I would keep Christian Walker. I would probably, I hate avoiding either of them, but I would probably stream Tristan Casas for the upside and avoid Pasquantino, though I wasn't too worried, even though he was rushed back in the playoffs. It was such a fluky injury of how that happened. So it's kind of a downer for him for such a good bounce back season that he did have. But if we're playing the game, I would avoid Vinny Pasquantino.
This is the best part of the game, is the awkward, like, I don't want to answer the question.
That's why you have to break rules sometimes, Dave. Sometimes I say I'm keeping them both. Yeah.
Oh, we have that option. Okay.
No,
great.
you do not.
Not really, but we use it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely, you have to consider too, Kevin, too, when we're talking gladiators, sometimes that upside is necessary, especially right around this part of the draft. I mean, I think I might actually lean Casas for that reason. It's like you do need to take the darts. It's just a matter of whether you think Casas is going to miss more time. I'm confident that if he doesn't miss time, he will be very good. And so it all really comes down to, and like you said, he could be better than the other two as well. And so it's that kind of dart throw. You just got to hope you hit the balloon and there's a prize inside. All right. And those can be the differences of winning your gladiator instead of just shredding water. Let's go into late round. Well, technically shortstop. These guys are all shortstops. I want to say middle infield, but we'll get into some earlier middle infields in a second. Late round shortstops here. More than likely, they will go into your middle infield slot in a NFBC roster. Dave, we'll start here with you. We got Trevor Story staying in Boston at 234. Carlos Correa at 268, and then free agent Hyun-Sung Kim at 282. And this is not to be confused, because for a second, as I was doing Control F through the Gladiator ADP, I did notice there was another Kim with a similar sounding first name. I had to ask Kevin. I'm like, I actually don't know this player. Did somebody just type in Hyun-Sung Kim into the NFC BC player pool? No, different player, free agent, second baseman, still in the middle infield. So we're talking obviously of the former Padre, currently free agent Hyun-Sung Kim at 282. So Dave, of these three guys, again, more than likely going to be slotted into your middle infield. Questions about their health. Correa, always, it's an evergreen tweet. Questions about his health. Kim missed most of last season as well, and Trevor Story is, Trevor Story. So I don't know that any of these guys are trustworthy when it comes to health. Please correct me if I'm wrong here. But who are you avoiding? Who are you streeping? And you have to actually keep one of them.
Oh, I was gonna say I couldn't bring one of the keeps or
no rollover. No, there's no rollover.
No rollover.
Yeah.
Okay. Of the three, I would probably keep. As hard as it is to say, I would probably keep Carlos Correa, only because I believe he should be fine with this plantar fasciitis by the time the season rolls around, and he's had success in the past. I would probably stream Trevor Story, and I would probably avoid Ha-Seong Kim, only because it's shoulder surgery and he's going to miss some time, and I don't know where he's going to play yet. Even though he has the lowest of the three ADP, I would probably still avoid him. So yeah, I would keep Correa, stream Story, with the hope that he can finally have a healthy season, and avoid Kim.
Yeah, I mean, I think the argument can be made that Kim has. This is another situation where Kim actually might have the highest upside if healthy, if he finds the right spot. The thing is, there are so many ifs. There are so many unknowns. It's not just health; it's who he's going to play for, what role he'll have with that new team, and how if they're going to invest money in how how they might baby him in that shoulder as he comes back. Kevin, you feeling the same way? That super awkwardness when I force you to actually pick somebody to keep.
No, I agree. I agree with what Dave said, with the caveat that in some drafts I will take that chance on Haesung Kim and bump him above the other two. Not always. I think in general I'm going to be sitting where Dave is, but for those that play volume and play multiple leagues, I'd take a chance on Haesung Kim in at least one or two of them.
All right, so that means you're. Well, are you? I mean, you didn't answer the question though. You didn't actually pick any players. You said you would keep Kim in those parts, but if you're keeping Kim, you have to avoid and you have to stream the other two.
Yeah, I agree with with Dave's three. The way he laid it out, just with the caveat, in a spot or two, I'll probably go the other way and do it the exact opposite.
Just for funsies. All right, we'll stay. We'll stay
depending on where it lands. Kim could be a huge get at that price.
Yeah, and it's low enough where you're taking a chance, but you're really not. It's too
right.
Yeah, especially if you didn't, stock up on stolen bases early on in your drafts as well. All right, and he's more than a rabbit. This is usually where you would end up getting those rabbits, and you're not feeling really good about it, but feeling like you almost had to. So there's that situation where that actually makes sense. All right, we'll go up a couple rounds here. Stay in the middle infield, mostly second base, but we'll throw in some Bo Bichette in there as well at 141. Nico Horner at 184, and Matt McLean just a little bit earlier than these guys at currently going at 118. Kevin, these are second base, shortstop eligible players that either might actually be your starting second baseman or shortstop. Might, if you got somebody high end at the top, could be your middle infielder. Who are you keeping? Who are you streaming? And who are you avoiding?
Yeah, this is a tough one because of the gap. I think Bo Bichette is my avoid, but I'll get that one out of the way. I am not confident at all in him bouncing back, even to where he's projected as like 16 home runs and 9 stolen bases. I'm not even confident in that. I think he's going to be a really hard time getting to double-digit home runs, and we haven't seen him steal over 5 bases in a while. So and it's when you I know this is I'm bringing this up the 1 week, Adam, out of the last 6 where you didn't have a rolling chart ready to go. But we have looked at Bo Bichette's in the back, and if you go back to early June of 2023, the decisions just completely flopped from making great decisions to horrible, and has been doing it for over 650 plate appearances now consistently. I am out on Bo Bichette at this price and quite a bit later as well. So we have a huge gap between Mac McLean and Nico Horner here, and I think I'm willing to pay up for Matt McLean. You have him listed as a 118 ADP here. That's what it's been for most of the season, but recently he's going inside the top 100 and right at around 100 over the past several drafts. People are remembering what Matt McLean was doing before the injury, what we saw from him in 2023, and I kind of agree. I think I would take that jump here. Nico Horner is in that group. We've been talking about this. Not having a plan for having a plan for second base doesn't mean taking one early. This is a group down here where Nico Horner's being drafted, and they're all similar players. Decent to pretty good batting average, stolen bases and runs. That's what we're expecting from Nico Horner, but there's several of those guys in that spot. So he's going to be my stream here because I'll take whichever one of them's available at that time of the several similar guys. I think Matt McLean, even at a late 8th round pick. Is that where we're at here? Yeah, late 8th round pick in a 15-teamer. There's still value there.
David, you have as little faith in Bo Bichette as Kevin has, or are you going to mix it up a little bit?
I actually really like Bo Bichette this year. Okay, so I was looking into it. So I know he struggled last year in around June or July, but it was when he's got it was in something in his knee. So from July 1st to 31st, he was still hitting well over 300, and then he left for his right knee, and then he had tendonitis. He just hasn't been able to figure that out yet, and I just know that I think last year was a season from hell from him. I think it was just he tried last offseason to play through it, to try different ways. He may end up needing surgery, but I just think this year it was also him compensating and trying to play with something that he has. I don't know how he's going to be this offseason, which is why for me, I'm going to stream him with the hope and the belief that maybe he can turn it around in a contract year. I know he hasn't stolen many bases, but he did have last year, he did have, I believe it was 5 stolen bases in the small amount of time that he had, and increase his sprint speed. So I'm going to hope with the streaming that he can go to 2010, and he's had 3 seasons of high batting average, which is something really difficult to maintain in a league. So I'm going to stream Bo Bichette, and I'm actually going to keep Nico Horner, and I'm going to avoid Matt McLean, even though he's really doing well in the AFL this year.
It's always nice to see the players that it's nice to see teams utilizing the AFL in this way to bring back players, to get them some reps when they miss so much time, and not just not just using it for once they opened it up. I think this was just a couple of years ago that they did this. They made it eligible for any player, not just prospects, to be able to use that time in different ways. So that's great to see him being successful in that environment going into the offseason. All right, we are going to hit up some corner infielders. We're going to get to that right after this break. All right, we're back. Of course, you're still listening to On the Corner. We are talking about all the players that are worth talking about that are coming back into 2025 after questionable health questions. Sure, why not? In 2024. Not everyone is coming back at 100%. We already talked about how, we're already going to see some time miss out of Ha-Seong Kim, and there's some other players we're going to talk to as well. Let's hit up their corner infielders, Dave. And there's a wide range in ADP here, but they're all post 200 ADP in Gladiators through the 19 drafts that have been completed so far. We'll start with the earliest one here with Josh Young. 214, Cabrian Hayes at 341, and right in the middle of the two, Jaime Candelario at 302. So most of these guys are all first base, third base eligible. They're all third base eligible with first baseman thrown there as well. So of these three, Dave, who are you avoiding, streaming, and keeping in your corner infield slot?
I'm going to keep, actually, of the three, Jaime Candelario, just because I think it was a season from hell from him. Just a ton of injuries and a lot of bad luck. And his season-ending injury was a foul ball in a game that should have been called from the rain. So he's going to play in Cincinnati. I think he's going to have a nice bounce-back season. And at pick 302, I'm willing to take that chance. I'm going to stream Josh Young with the hope that he can somehow stay healthy, even though his past has really shown that he can't. And I love Cabrian Hayes, but I am avoiding him altogether until he has some sort of procedure or surgery to fix that back. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that this is a group that, you have so many question marks regarding health and future health, obviously compared to what they've shown you in the past as well. And that is obviously baked into their ADP. We've seen, well, you can't really say it about Young except for like that nice streak that he had where he looked like he was going to be MVP after about 2 weeks. But we've seen them all perform in some capacity. Kevin, are you willing to, especially in a gladiator, are you willing to pay these very late prices for the upside that they could bring if they're healthy? In conjunction with, obviously, you have to answer the ask question.
I am. I'm keeping Josh Young here. The price is slightly high on average. That's early 16th round in a 15-teamer, but he's still 26 years old, and we know that his what we thought was going to be his breakout rookie year was derailed. We didn't even see him much that year, and then we saw him miss time in 2024 as well. But that 2023 looked really, really good, and I feel like I agree with Dave. It even though he's my keep rather than my stream, I feel like I'm taking a chance on that he is going to stay healthy. Early 16th round, I can make that jump. So I'm just flipping him here. I'm streaming Eimer Candelario because I'm just out on Brian Hayes as well, avoiding I've had him on a couple of dynasty teams. I still have him on a dynasty team. But I just doesn't look like it's ever going to happen at this point. I'm taking the chance on Josh Young here as a keep, though.
Yeah, I mean, this is the chances you have to make with all these groupings, right? And just whether or not you made some of these other chances earlier on in the drafts can make you so that you can, if you didn't make a lot of those chances early, you can take the chance on Young later on, because you really don't want to like put all of your eggs into those chance baskets, especially in a gladiator. All right, let's move into the outfield mostly. These are going to be guys that either have or will gain. We expect to gain outfield eligibility early on in the season, or at least within the month or two. And of course, I'm talking about Brent Rooker, who goes into the season in most formats as a DH. But with the expectation he'll play enough in West Sacramento to regain outfield eligibility. He's going at ADP 71. Then we have a couple of former MVPs. Christian Yelich at 125, and of course Mike Trout at 148. It's fine. Like all these injuries really finally, catching up to Trout. He dropped obviously last year as well in ADP. Not quite out of the top 100 though. Now going at 148. Former first 2 pick or consensus first overall pick for many years in a row. Kevin, you get the honor here to start us off in the outfield. Trout, Yelich, Rooker, avoid, stream, keep.
If you'd have told me this would even be a consideration a while back, that Mike Trout having double the ADP of Brent Rooker, and I'm sitting here debating between the two, that would have seemed crazy not very long ago. You know what? I think my keep is Mike Trout. Everything sounds good. It seems like he is the healthiest he's been this early in the offseason for a while. I love the talk of moving to DH and corner outfield. I love that he has publicly said he is open to that. So a 10th round Mike Trout that even if we get 500 healthy plate appearances from, outperforms this by a country mile. I think we're seeing enough to make me believe he can do that. Excuse me, get to that 500 plus plate appearances. I can't avoid Brent Rooker. I love him. I drafted him at the 6-7 turn in a draft where I already had Shohei Ohtani. And Brent Rooker right now is UT only. We think he should get outfield eligibility at some point, since he had surgery to repair the arm troubles he was playing through all season, is why he was designated hitter. I am making the assumption that even early, like by the end of April, he has outfield eligibility. And Christian Yelich was having an amazing season. I should have broke the rules on this one, Adam, but I didn't. I hate to avoid Christian Yelich because the fact of the matter is, at these prices, I would keep all three. But for the rules of the game, it's keep Trout, stream Rooker, and I can't believe I'm avoiding a 9th round Christian Yelich. But yeah, with this grouping, I am.
With the A's and the type of players that they have in that lineup, I do not doubt for a second that Rooker won't be playing the outfield enough by the end of the first month of the season to regain that eligibility. Between
Hope you're right.
Yeah, exactly. Dave, how do you have? I mean, I think I worried most about Yelich's injury history and the surgery that he had at the end of the season. Tell me tell me there's nothing to worry about here, and I will believe you. But at the same time, I don't think you're going to.
Yeah, he's had these problems since like his minor league days, and I just hope that this surgery is the thing that finally fixes it. I don't know if it is though, and this might be something that we have to see before we believe. So for that reason, I'm going to avoid him. I want to keep Trout. I'll say this. I'll keep Trout if I'm playing in a shallow league because I don't know how long he's going to play, and it'll be easier to find something on the waiver wire.
In a FAAB league, you're keeping Trout.
Yeah.
Not the Gladiator. Gotcha.
Yeah. But I think the fact that Rooker played through the entire season and did what he did, I'm going to keep him, and he's got 69 home runs over 2 seasons somehow. So I'm going to keep him and hope that the new stadium, it helps offense a bit, and maybe he can reach 40 this year. Yeah, that's tough though. These are all good prices, like you said.
Of course, I'm using the ADP from the Gladiators. So, of course, once again, I'll echo my same statement. The injury history, the injury concerns are all baked in here to the price. So you very well may not be paying 148 for Trout in a FAAB league because you can take a little bit more risk in that situation as well. So keep an eye on that based on your draft type that you're doing. All right, and then we'll go later on in the outfield. These guys are probably hitting up the bottom half, if not the very bottom of your outfield 4s, outfield 5s, maybe even possibly your DH spot for 1 or 2 of them. Dalton Varsho going at 310. Young-Hoo Lee, who missed, I think, the entire season or thereabouts of 2024. For San Francisco, and then Evan Carter at 290, right between these two guys as well. So Dave, I'll start here with you as well. Evan Carter, Young-Hoo Lee, and Dalton Varsho at the bottom of your outfield. Who are you keeping, who are you streaming, and who are you avoiding?
I'm going to keep Young-Hoo Lee only because of the 3. I know that he's apparently the healthiest. He is apparently he's gone through everything that he's supposed to be doing. And the Giants are giving him tasks to do this offseason, and he's been able to do it. So I liked him coming into last season. So I'm going to pick him. And then I'm going to be a hypocrite here, and I'm going to stream Evan Carter only because we haven't seen him do it yet, even though we haven't seen Young-Hoo Lee do it yet. But I'm going to stream Evan Carter just because he is so young, and I'm going to avoid Varsho just because we don't know the exact surgery that was done. It's the rumor that is the rotator cuff and that he might be ready for spring training, but we don't know that for sure. He might be a full participant. He might not. And if there's any setbacks, any delays, he's going to miss some time. So.
Yeah, and once again, baked into the ADP, he's going obviously the latest of all 3 of these guys. It is interesting because, like you said, Hooley's the one you know is the healthiest, but we've basically seen the least of. And whether or not you were in on him going into 2024 or not, you still don't know what kind of production he can bring to the table. Top of the lineup for San Francisco, which is what was expected going into the season. Assuming that they were going to put him right at the top of the lineup again, or at least give him the opportunity to win that position. We'll kind of see. Kevin, are you having the same kind of mentality here for the end of your outfield?
Yeah, pretty close. I'm avoiding Varsho, unfortunately. I think I'd actually keep Evan Carter though. I know this can get us in trouble. I do, but both he and the Rangers believe that this most recent surgery he just had in October can really clear up the nagging problems he had throughout the 2024 season. If that's the case, he's easily my keep. So if I'm going to believe that, um, I'll buy that for now at this price. And Jung Hoo Lee, yeah, great batting average asset. Probably not going to get a whole lot in other categories, but also not going to hurt you. So it can depend on the draft as well here. If you're getting to this point, you need a fifth outfielder and you're a little worried about your batting average. I could shift gears and I could play Jung Hoo Lee as my keep, but he's going to be my streamer here. I'm going to take a chance on Evan Carter. It's late enough. I'm going to believe what he and the Rangers are telling us about his back being that he'll be 100% for spring training.
It's funny because you have to pick and choose when you want to use the phrase. If they tell you something, you have to believe them.
Believe them.
And this one is this.
I don't believe them as often when they're telling me something good.
Yeah.
So I'm still hesitant. When they're telling me something bad, I absolutely believe
have
them.
to believe it. Yeah, sure. Good mentality to have. All right, let's finish out one more grouping of hitters before we get into the pitchers. These are guys that are going at the very end. They're not even being drafted in every draft here. And they're kind of a wild card. They're all over the place as far as position eligibility goes. Another UT only at least going into the season with Masataka Yoshida at 344. Brooks Lee at 345, and then Jorge Polanco, who has not been drafted yet in a completed Gladiator. Kevin, lead us off here. Obviously, we've got two infielders and who could be an outfielder at some point. If Yoshida actually gets into the outfield mix with Boston, or if he just spends all of his time as a platoon DH. I'm not quite sure. Depends on what the Red Sox do with the rest of their offseason. So if you are taking a dart on any of these guys at the end, who are you keeping, who are you streaming, and who are you avoiding?
I have and will continue to draft Jorge Polanco at the end of every draft if it's going to continue to be available there. He was playing through injury. We know about Seattle and the batter's eye and all that. Polanco, he may not be a superstar. He may not put up his career average numbers again, but I'm taking a chance that he will, getting out of both of those situations. The Seattle hitting environment and the injury he was playing through. I think he will outperform draft price, and not just not being drafted in Gladiators, but draft price in other formats. I think he's going to outperform it regardless of where he lands. Brooks Lee, I'm excited about him as a lot of people are. The prospect, he'll be my streamer. Yoshida just doesn't do enough for me. It in any specific fantasy category that I have much interest at all. I'm extremely interested in a Polanco bounce back after playing through injuries in 2024. So yeah, as long as he stays at this draft price, he's going to be on a lot of my teams.
Dave, I saw you get a nice little fist bump there as Kevin was talking about Jorge Polanco. I'm assuming you're going to stay in the same camp then.
Absolutely, and you said it perfectly. I think it's the batter's eye, and I think wherever he goes, he's gonna do well or better. Let's put it that way, better. And yeah, I would keep Polanco. I would stream Brooks Lee for that upside, and Yoshida. Yeah, especially with the off-season surgery, they expect him to be ready, but they say he could be limited offensively as well. So exactly what you said. It was perfect.
on that positive note here, we're gonna go into our pitchers because those are always so much more fun to talk about when you're comparing them side by side, and we'll get to those guys right after this quick break. All right, back. Let's jump right into the pitchers. And Dave, you get to start us off here with our SP2, SP3, depending on how aggressively you're drafting your starting pitchers in your drafts. All guys going right around pick 100 to 125 ish range. Joe Ryan at 103. Tyler Glass now at 108, and then Shane McClanahan coming back at 126. Which one of these guys, if they are in some cases they actually might be your SP1. I guess that's a better question. Are you willing, if you haven't still picked a pitcher, a starting pitcher in a draft, are you willing to have one of these guys coming back from injury be your SP1 in those scenarios? And then you can answer the ask question.
If maybe Joe Ryan, but he would also be the one that I would keep of the three, just because all the signs are pointing to that he will be ready for opening day. So the hope is that he is healthy and has a good off season. So I would keep him, and I think I could make it with him as my SP1, but I need to get some pitchers right after him. And that's assuming that my offense is stellar and I'm good to go for a while. If I'm streaming anyone, it's Shane McClanahan, with the hope that he's able to come in. And I know it's a second Tommy John, but late August, he was throwing mid-90s. So I'm encouraged by that, but not enough to just keep him. It's stream to make sure he's able to do what he's supposed to be doing. And then with all capitals, bolded, underlined, and italicized, I am avoiding Tyler Glass now. So it's.
Would you like to elaborate? Yeah.
Well, how much time do we have? No, it's just with the injuries, the elbow, and there could be a tear in there, which is something that I would be worried about. He said that when he was rushing back the first time, before he was trying to get back just before the playoffs started, he said that the MRI didn't show any healing. It didn't show anything improving. So that's why he went to rest. And while he did say after a while, the MRI did show significant healing. There's something about it. The fact that he hasn't ever pitched, I think it's more than 140 innings in a season. And B, there could be just something there that's masked with some rest. And it's one of those things where we always see every April where players who don't do, I'm not saying he's not going to do what he's supposed to do in the off season, but having that off season off with injuries that were not properly treated with, they come back and they start throwing again. And oh my God, it's hurting again. It's hurting. And then all of a sudden they're out for the year. So I am avoiding him altogether with the hope that someone else can deal with those problems, and I'll find someone else either later on or before that.
Fair enough. Kevin, I want to pose you the same question regarding what kind of risk you're willing to take as your SP1 if you did wait long enough where these are the guys that are available to you as your first starting pitcher. Do you grab one of them for the upside and then hopefully stabilize with your SP2, 3, and 4 kind of back to back in the next couple rounds? Or do you just you need that SP1 to have a little bit more stability?
No, I love waiting and grabbing an SP1 if I'm comfortable in innings and then the production I think I'll get from those innings, and I think I am with Shane McClanahan. I've drafted him there. He might have been my second pitcher taken because of where his ADP is. I didn't have to take him as high. But I know it's his second TJ, but he's healthy. He's healthy right now. Joe Ryan didn't finish the season. and everything Dave said about Glasnow. So I want to keep McClanahan and avoid both the others, but I will stream one. I'm gonna stream Glasnow. I think if I had to draft these guys in a gladiator, I would take Joe Ryan over Tyler Glasnow. However, as a streamer, that's what Glasnow is going to be. When he's healthy, we're going to want him in our lineups, right?
Yeah, sure.
So he's my streamer here. But McClanahan is the easy keep for me, especially being the latest one drafted.
Yeah,
I'd take him above these guys straight up in the same spot. I mean, they're close, but I still would.
Yeah, I mean, basically a round apart, apart from each other. And if you're in the middle of the round, yeah, it's exactly a round apart. But if you're at one end, he's not coming back around to the other side. We'll go further down into the rotation, then guys that are going closer to like an SP3, SP4 situation, right around pick 200 with a little bit of a buffer here. Sandy Alcantara at 175. We got Woodruff at 209, and then Jeffrey Springs at 246. Kevin, with the middle of your rotation in question, which one of these guys are you avoiding streaming and keeping?
I'm keeping Sandy here. I mean, this is the Pitcher List podcast network. So I'm keeping Sandy here. I'm all in on what Nick has been saying about these guys coming back from injury in 2025. I'm in. Due to what we talked about very early in the show, my stream here is going to be Woodruff because I'm a little worried about the hitters environment in the AL East with Jeffrey Springs. So I'll take Woodruff as my streamer and avoid Springs of this group for the ballpark reason and other ballparks in the division.
Yeah, this is the first time we've actually been able to, put a player to the face of these changes of the ballpark. Obviously, we can talk about all the guys in Baltimore earlier, but Dave, how much of that new ballpark for Springs is going into your decision here?
Well, I am going to keep Alcantara as well. I agree. He's going to come back strong, the strongest of the three, I think. I think I'm going to stream Jeffrey Springs, but it's a lot of it also has to do with I'm not sure with Woodruff at his age and with this injury how well he'll be able to come back. I hope so. Like it would be a great story for him because it was such a tragic injury so late on a contract year. But yeah, sorry. With regard to the stadium as well, the ballparks. Yeah, you have to consider it. It definitely is a consideration with how things are changing in the AL East. The only thing is that they don't play each other as often as they once did. So I do consider it. But in this case, I would stream Springs still and take the chance when, if we're streaming in good situations. And I would just avoid Woodruff with the hope that, I'm wrong about him and that he can actually come back.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way there. It's like that's the one where you want to be wrong as much as you possibly can be. All right, let's end out the rotation here with these final three starters before we get into our closers to end us out here. Dave starts off here with the grouping of Lucas Giolito coming back for the Boston Red Sox. Max Scherzer, who made an attempt to come back in 2024. Giolito going at 345, Scherzer going at 342, and then Jesus Luzardo going right before both of these guys at 333. None of these guys are getting drafted at 100% in these 19 gladiators that have been completed so far. So they're guaranteed to be available to you in these gladiators in the final two rounds. So you can consider that there. Which one of these guys, Dave, are you considering to keep, stream if available in a FAAB league, or avoid altogether regardless of format?
Of the three, I would probably keep Giolito. I know he was pushing to try and pitch by the end of last season, but the team had to stop him from doing it. So I think he's going to be the healthiest of the three. I think I I would stream Scherzer, even though I don't like him at all this year, because I think Mother Nature's catching up with him. The only reason I'd avoid Luzardo is there's so much unknown about him, and he originally had a 4 to 6 week timeline to come back, and then it was extended even more. I don't know if it was the team just giving up last year, and I don't know if it was also the team wanting him to be healthy enough in the offseason if they wanted to trade him. I don't know if there was like an underlying issue of health for why he didn't play again. So that's why I'm going to avoid him, but I could easily swap him with Scherzer. I'm not in on Scherzer at all.
Yeah, Scherzer's a tough one because, again, like we talked about a couple other players, like a lot of question marks. Him, age this is the first guy I think on this list that we feel like is so up there in age, combined with injuries, combined with role in where he's going to actually be playing as well. He adds that extra wrinkle into everything you have to consider. Kevin, are you thinking, do you have any other differences in thought with these three guys to end out your rotation in most leagues?
No, I'm keeping Giolito. I think I'm streaming Scherzer as well, and I may have a little more confidence in Scherzer than Dave, but not enough to make him the keeper. I think just his mentality will make him good at times, and hopefully we can figure out when the matchups are right that we're streaming him in the right spot. And the timeline on the injury is exactly where I was going with Luzardo as 100% the reason to avoid him as well.
All right. Is this nice because we actually have three closers that have missed most of the, if not in the entire season. And these are actual closers. Like the majority of their careers have been closers. They're not relievers that, could possibly find their way back into a job. I think all three of these guys are soon to be their team's closers going into 2025. Some of them being drafted a little higher than others. Other ones being, two of them being drafted much later. And as it is with closers, there's a lot of fluctuation. Kevin starts off here with the high end of Felix Bautista. Are you paying the price of 58 ADP? Not only is it assumed that he is coming back at 100% the Baltimore closer, but that he is going to come back and be a top 5 closer based on production. And then you have, if you can wait a little bit longer to pick 268, you have your choice between Liam Hendriks of the Red Sox and Jordan Romano of the Blue Jays, literally having the same ADP of 268 with a little bit of a decimal point difference here. So between Bautista, Hendricks, and Romano, based on those ADPs, their role with their teams and going where they're going, who are you avoiding? Who are you streaming? Who are you keeping here?
I'm keeping Liam Hendriks. I'm rolling with it, Adam. We talked about this a few weeks back when we were doing our mock draft. I picked him up in the NSBC 50 I had going on at that time as well. And I'm all in at this price until we hear of a setback that we hopefully don't.
Exactly.
I think, and Felix Bautista, unfortunately, is going to be my avoid. It's price. There's guys going after him I feel more comfortable with. Once again, unfortunately, loved him when he was healthy. I'm just not going to take him ahead of Andres Munoz or Joan Duran, Robert Suarez. These are all closers. There's still guys I'm comfortable with being, in that so-called group of trust for closers that are being drafted after him. So unfortunately, Bautista coming off injury is going to be my avoid here. And I'm not as excited about Romano as I am Hendricks being drafted in the same spot. But at this price, yeah, he's my streamer. But I am all until Liam Hendricks starts going inside, probably starts jumping ahead of some of these other closers that aren't even really going that late. Liam Hendriks would have to go inside the top 150. The reason I'm saying that is, I mean, I would still take Liam Hendriks at this point ahead of Pete Fairbanks, and that's where he's going at pick 150. So before I even consider that Liam Hendriks isn't my keep here, he's got to jump over 100 spots.
I was going to jump up even further and say I was going to be without having ADP. My gut was, would you take Liam Hendriks or Alexis Diaz, based on what we saw last year, all the things we talked about, and Francona being in there to make a decision on whether or not to pull him or not. So with all those fluctuations or all those wrinkles, who do you take between Alexis Diaz or Liam Hendriks?
Oh, I'm taking Hendriks over Alexis Diaz, easy.
So there you go. I mean, he's got the ADP of all the way up to 137. So you're obviously, at least willing to have Hendriks go up a little bit further than 150. So
and this price is all about questions, right? With will he be back? Does he have the job? If people believe what you and I believe, Adam, he's jumping even higher than that.
Yeah, fair enough. Dave, please bring in your inner Mike Carter and give me your analysis here on these closers to be and closers once were and closers to be when they come back from their injuries. Bautista, Hendriks, Romano, who are you avoiding, streaming, and keeping here?
I'll do what I can to honor Mike here.
Mike.
Okay, I'm definitely avoiding Romano. I don't know if he'll be the closer. I don't know where he'll be next year. And the elbow problems are just, I'm avoiding. I love Liam Hendriks, but I don't know if he's actually, is he going to close? Do you guys, have you heard something? Because I know at the end of the year last year, he was supposed to pitch, but he didn't get in. And I'm sure it was all injury related, but I remember them saying that it was going to be, when he was coming in, would have been low leverage situations. I don't know if that was just because of the injury or if it was they were prepping someone else. And I can also see the Red Sox going out and signing a closer. Like they did that with Kenley Jansen when they really didn't need to. But
see, I'm under the impression, yes, all the talk about him coming in low leverage situations at the end of last year was specifically because it was the end of the year, and he didn't obviously actually make any of those appearances to begin with. With the full off season, I believe that they signed him for that 2-year contract with the intention of him being the closer for 2025 when they signed him. And this is, with the assumption that they're not going to re-sign Jansen. Yes, the Red Sox have a history of like making silly decisions on signing high-end closers when they don't need them, with the exception of the 2024 bringing in Keith Folk, when they obviously needed an actual closer to close out games. I don't see them spending the money to do that this year. I also don't see them having anybody coming up in their bullpen that is like ready to take that ball, especially the way that Liam Hendriks will, with 1 year left on his contract, 1 year left probably in his career. I can't imagine why they wouldn't at least give him the shot at the start of the season and just let him ride as long as that arm will allow him to do it. So that's my mentality. Maybe that's me as a Red Sox fan, and as a Liam Hendriks rosterer in at least one dynasty league, and maybe crossing my fingers that it'll actually happen. But that's where I'm going. No, I have not heard anything directly from the team or from him or from anybody naming him the closer. I just don't see an alternate moving forward.
As the Red Sox fan, this is what I wanted to ask you about, because Cora a couple of times recently has brought up Slayton as a possibility.
Sure.
To me, this sounds like he's not telling Slayton he doesn't have a chance, and he's not just handing the job to Hendriks, is what it sounds like to me. And I'm hopeful of that because of how I've been drafting. Is that your read on that situation as well?
Yeah, I mean, I just can't imagine that. Well, Slayton's going to be with the team a whole lot longer. He's going to be with the team beyond Liam Hendriks, and you want to give him that kind of a confidence that, like, hey, put in your time, show us what you got in the 8th inning on a consistent basis. And honestly, the job is probably yours if and when Hendricks, gets hurt or he struggles or he just decides to retire early or whatever the case may be. But yeah, and this is the Red Sox, so I can't use the word logical all the time. But logically speaking, there's just no reason why Hendricks wouldn't be at least given the job to start the season. In my mind.
Makes sense.
I'm gonna steal all that talk from you, Dave. But yeah,
You made Mike Herter proud right there.
Yeah.
You did.
Well, yeah, he's got the former White Sox closer as well, so I'm sure he's the one shining star that he can remember from the last 10 years. So yeah, I mean that grouping is interesting because of course the one that we all think probably the highest of is everybody else thinks the highest of as well, as Felix Bautista going at 58. I mean, Dave, I haven't seen any like real reports of Bautista's health expectations, except for the fact that there was a question about whether or not he would be available in the postseason, and that was quickly shot down from what I saw. It's like, no, just not going to happen. Have you seen anything updating him on his actual health going into 2025? Or are we all just playing on assumptions here?
No, I think he's going to be good to go. I remember seeing, maybe it was late in the season, just him looking like close to form. And he was throwing off the mound in August, and I think he was throwing some bullpens. And because he's a reliever, his time to come back should be significantly lower than like a starter. I think he's going to be good to go come spring.
It's exactly the terms that Mike Elias used, is more or less without restrictions to be good to go for spring training.
Yeah. So see, at 58, am I getting a top 5 closer there?
Yeah, right.
Or am I getting at 268? Am I getting potentially 15 steals? And then what happens if his arm doesn't go, or what if happens if it's a committee? Then again, that is pick 268. So this is hard. This might be the hardest one. I'll you know what? I'll keep Hendricks. I'll stream Bautista, and I'll avoid Romano, and I'll try and get I'll solidify some closer somewhere else.
Yeah, there we go. Luckily, in an actual draft, you don't only have to select from formerly injured players. You can scatter in some healthy ones as well. We're going to close it out here with I'm going to randomly select from this last grouping of wild card players, as I called them. But I'm going to just use the starters are in this mix. So we're not going to talk about Luis Arias. He said obviously he was injured throughout the season. He still got the batting title, so he's not really coming back from injury per se. And I'm also going to keep out Clayton Kershaw here, as he also has not been drafted in any of these gladiators. We have no idea what his status is going to be going into 2025. We technically don't know what team he's going to play for, though he's basically said he's either going to play for the Dodgers or nobody at all. So with these other aces that are on the board, I added one here at the last second. Dave, I'll let you start us off here to this last group. They're all going at different times in drafts. I am going to put Shohei Ohtani in here, but I want the caveat that you're only drafting him in this scenario as a pitcher. And then we have, of course, Spencer Strider. In Gladiators, he has an ADP of 162, and then Jacob deGrom at 44. Of course, we know Ohtani is going first overall. Whether he is Kevin and I drafted him in the PL mock draft much later than that, but that's a Yahoo base, so that he's going as just a pitcher in that scenario. So with deGrom, Strider, and Ohtani, all obvious aces at when healthy, knowing what you know about their timelines, about their injury histories, and then of course their ADP, who are you streaming, who are you keeping, and who are you avoiding in this group?
Well, I'm glad you said it's just Ohtani, the pitcher, because if it was the hitter, it would have been the toughest one yet. But of the 3, I think I'm actually going to keep Strider at 162. I'm going to stream DeGrom, and I'm going to avoid Ohtani. With regards to Strider, I know it was the UCL was intact, but it was the bone fragment that needed the fixing. So I think this is a good chance. It's a good buying situation because I think he's just going to miss about a month, knock on wood. But if you can get someone who was one of the best pitchers in baseball at 162 and you're getting him for all but 1 month, I think that's an absolute steal. I'm streaming DeGrom because the latest report, he seems fine, but the latest report was that they don't yet have a plan for him for next season. It was a wait and see approach. They're going to see how he feels, how things go, and then go from there. So they weren't committing to a workload. They weren't committing to anything. So that kind of scared me a little bit. And given his age and his injury history, I'm going to stream him, and then I'm going to avoid Ohtani just because of all the injuries that he's had to come back from and will come back from next year.
Fair enough. I'm going to shout out to Uncle Ted here in the chat, who yells out all of them for all of it. And that's exactly what Kevin and I did in our PL mock draft. We drafted all 3 of these guys back to back to back. So that was a lot of actual fun. And that's what drafts should be sometimes, right? Or all the time. They should just be fun, especially a mock draft. Kevin closes out here between DeGrom, Strider, and Ohtani. You can only keep one of them. You can't draft them all. Stream the other one and keep them. Of course, Ohtani, just the pitcher here in your considerations. What do you got?
I'm keeping DeGrom. It's not close for me. Although that it's kind of funny that in past seasons when we had injury concerns and how many innings is DeGrom going to pitch this season, kind of what, the general area that I've heard from a lot of people is 120 innings. That's what we need. And he's the number 1 pitcher if we get 120 innings out of him. Well, when we look at projections for 2025, that's not quite the case, right? 126 innings projections still brings him in as the 7th overall starting pitcher, though. And that's pretty good to be getting him on average towards the end of the 3rd round. That's not going to keep up. He's going early, earlier and earlier into the 2nd. I think if we see him healthy in spring, he probably gets drafted at the 1st round in a main event draft. I really think that will happen. I'm taking that value right now. He's healthy now. I don't think I've seen more interaction on any of the social media platforms this offseason than when people post a draft board or post a rankings list that includes Jacob deGrom. There is such a wide range of opinions on him. And I'm of the opinion he's healthy and his elbow is fixed. And that elbow has been the reason for every scenario over the past few years of our concerns with Jacob deGrom. It's all been this arm. It's all been putting off this surgery that he finally had, and now it's fixed. And I buy into that. And so I believe Jacob deGrom is a 1st round pitcher available in the 3rd round right now. And he could get hurt and we could be wrong, but that's where I'm at. And I feel like people either agree with that or they think he shouldn't be taken till the 15th round. I don't think there's a lot of people in between from what I've seen. But so he's easily my keep here. And because we have the hitter's price, this is a cop out. We have the including a hitter price on Ohtani. He's my avoid. If he's only a pitcher, I'm not taking him at 1 overall. And I agree with everything Dave said about Spencer Strider, although they have mentioned it could be early June, which would be 2 months, but still at this draft cost, 11th round for what he could do for 2/3 of a season, even that easily. And if I miss DeGrom, if there's somebody that likes him more than me, then yeah, Spencer Strider's my keep here. I would agree with Dave.
So this DeGrom is the perfect example here of what I was talking about earlier with the other SB1s or possible SB1s. If you draft DeGrom or a player like that earlier on in the 3rd round, what have you, are you then avoiding all of the Joe Ryan, Tyler Glasnow, Shane McClanahan group just due to added risk benefits, or does that compounding risk and compounding upside enough to consider kind of stacking those guys?
Not me. I am not worried about DeGrom's health.
So it's not even it's not
I
a risk.
I feel like the so-called TJ honeymoon, right? I really feel that with Jacob DeGrom because he's been putting it off for years. We're finally seeing that elbow healthy. And what, 14 strikeouts to 1 walk in 10 innings with a 1.69 ERA, I think is what we saw from him with the limited September.
Sure.
He looked like Jacob DeGrom. Let's roll.
Yeah, here we go. All right, awesome. Dave, thank you so much for coming on, and hopefully we'll hear a whole lot more of your voice going on as the fantasy baseball beat. Do you guys have put you on the spot, but do you guys have plans for your next couple beat writers that you guys will be bringing on to start off in the Pitcher List Podcast Network that you're aware of?
We're in the process of finding some beat writers. It's always a challenge sometimes, to get people on their schedules and stuff like that. But we've had some good guests in the past, so we're hopeful that we can have some recurring guests. And we've got a lot of stuff planned for the off season. So
cool. I mean, you guys have your hands full with the winter meetings coming up soon, and I'm sure there'll be lots of things for all the beat writers to talk about, and lots for you guys to talk about as well. So I like how you guys take that information from the beat writers and also add obviously your own takes into that, especially from a fantasy standpoint, which I think a lot of these beat writers obviously are aware of fantasy exists, but a couple of them, or if not most of them, don't take that into account as much when they're writing. And so to have them take their knowledge about real life baseball and apply it to fantasy baseball is extremely, I think, just it's a source of information we don't get a whole lot of. And so I think you guys do a great job with that. So keep up the good work. Kevin, close us out here with anything else that we can take away as we continue our draft season in mid-November as we get into the holidays. It's always people think of football on for Thanksgiving, but you can always do a Black Friday draft as well. Hopefully there's some deals
100%. Oh yeah, I will be drafting over Thanksgiving weekend. I don't know which draft yet, don't even know which format, but more than likely a Gladiator, a DC, maybe both, maybe even start jumping in some of these OCs that are available earlier than they ever have been. I think have fun with this. ADP is starting to stabilize a little bit. I have already began sorting by a date range and knocking out some of the first couple, because those first couple we had, those drafting had no idea. And so there's some huge outliers in the first few drafts. So I've already been changing the date range, and that shows us some big differences. It is stabilizing. Also, at the same time, remember, this is just a price. This is just giving us information. I like 2 of these players. Like the biggest advantage of ADP is, do I have a chance to get them both? Can this one make it back to me if I take this one here? And that's really what we should be looking at ADP as. Even though it's starting to stabilize, you can't trust it. You like somebody, and if you are 100% set on having a player on your team, you have to beat that min pick, right? So keep this in mind. Even though it's stabilizing, it's still just a market. It's still just a tool. Draft your players where you want them.
There we go. Get your guy, as one would say. All right. Well, it's all that and everything else after consideration. That's going to do it for episode 190 of On the Wire. We're that much closer to episode 200, Kevin. I want to once again thank our guest, Dave Funnell, for joining us. And on behalf of Kevin Hasting, I am Adam Howe. Thanks for listening, and we bid you goodbye.